Hey, it's Tuesday. It's 4 o'clock. You know what that means? It's time for the Audra Christian Show and the Real Estate of Real Estate on Talk Radio, starting right now. Watch out. You might get what you're after. Cool, babies. Strange banana stranger. I'm an organ and guy. Burning down the house. Hold tight. Wait till the party's over. Hold tight. We're in for nasty weather. There has got to be a way. Burning down the house. It's a ticket, pack your bags. Time for jumping overboard. Transportation is here. Close enough but not too far.
Hello, this is Jeff J. in Tampa Bay. I'm substituting for Audra Christian, and we have a special guest. We have Susan Melendy on, and we are going to be having some special guests, Ken Burke, Clerk of the Circuit Court, possibly Senator Darryl Rouson, and we are going to be discussing, Susan is a seasoned real estate broker, but she has a 501c3, Justice for All Florida, dealing with guardianship and prison reform. And both those issues do directly affect us in regards to real estate. Basically, it's defining whether or not people want to stay in Florida or not, because the way that things are going with guardianship and prison reform are not going so good. So we definitely want to tackle that. And we are currently, Susan, can you hear me? I don't think she can hear me on the Zoom. I had just given you an introduction. Your 501c3 is Justice for All Florida, yes?
It is.
Excellent. And so Ken Burke is going to be on later to discuss guardianship with us.
Yeah, he may. And then also Hillary Hogue is going to be joining in.
And Hillary Hogue. So folks, we have an exciting, just put on your seatbelts. The thing regarding guardianship is very concerning. Are we going to be discussing the guardianship first or the DOC issues?
Well, we were going to do DOC, but Ken, what is your schedule like? Because Hillary can't jump on until 4:30. So what's convenient for you?
I could be here as long as you need me.
Yeah, let's discuss the guardianship. Hi, Ken. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking the time. Clerk of Circuit Court for Pinellas, Ken Burke. Susan Melendy of Justice for All Florida. She's also a very seasoned real estate broker, and we're here to discuss the guardianship issues in Florida. So go ahead and take it away.
All right. Well, Ken and I have known each other for some time. We have some mutual friends, but Ken Burke is obviously the clerk of courts for it's Pinellas and Pasco County. Is that correct, Ken?
Just Pinellas.
Just Pinellas. And so once I sort of experienced what is guardianship and sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly of what exists within our probate courts, I reached out to Ken with regard to my concern and asked him, to have a better understanding as to what is the role of the clerk of courts and, what changes can we impart within the probate court system. And like we've discussed, how do you eat an elephant, I guess, one bite at a time, that we started a pilot program in Pinellas County with Ken and his staff and some other advocates, which again, Hillary will join us shortly. But this is a type of problem that you have to really address short-term, long-term, through legislative change. And so through that initiative, Ken took the responsibility to initiate the Florida Task Force, which I'll let Ken talk more about that. And that has been in session now for several months, and they're getting ready to present their findings to the current session of legislatures. So Ken, you want to just elaborate from there?
Sure, Jeff. And Sue, thank you. First of all, you have to acknowledge that there's big flaws in the guardianship program in the state of Florida, because until you do that, you're not going to have any action. And thankfully, because of some of the publicity nationally, and I'm just being real direct, of Britney Spears, more people know about guardianships. It's become something which become a table topics at dinner tables. And so in the state of Florida, we have well-documented problems. We don't have the big celebrity of Britney Spears, but we have well-documented problems throughout the state. It's not limited to Pinellas County or Orlando, Palm Beach, Miami. You go around the state and there's been problems with guardianships. So when you acknowledge that problem, you have to say, what are we going to do to correct it? And that's why the task force was formed of a diverse group of people from all points of view to offer legislative solutions to make the system a heck of a lot better.
Are there any other clerks of circuit court that are working in concert with you in any other counties?
Yes, there's two clerks on the task force. One, the clerk from Okaloosa, which is up in the Panhandle, and the other, the clerk from Collier County, which is down Naples. But there's buy-in from the clerks throughout the state of Florida, and there's great interest in this to work to make the system better. And it really does need a good amount of change. First of all, Jeff, you'll be shocked to know that there's no database statewide of information on guardianship. If you ask me the question, how many guardianships exist in the state of Florida right now, not only I can't tell you, no one can tell you.
So one thing, okay, say to the average person, we're talking to say somebody, they're like, okay, I don't quite know what guardianship is. So just me as a layman, guitar player, construction worker, guardianship to me in a discussion with Susan, the impression I get is, okay, a court can just declare somebody incompetent, depending on the judge you get, could be potluck. A relative could just say, hey, this person's mentally incompetent. Then they just can assign just about anybody to watch over this person's entire resources, tell them when they can, what and when they can take their medications or what medications, et cetera, the whole nine. And then they wind up in this legal rigmarole to where their resources get drained paying attorneys on Zoom meetings on billable hours. Is that kind of the gist of it?
That's the gist of it. But what's important to take it a little bit, a step back from that is a lot of people in Florida and in the United States, either don't know about guardianship, or when you have a conversation like Ken is saying now, because of the popularity of the subject, is people say, oh, well, that could never happen to me because I have a trust. I have a DPOA. I have advanced directives. I've designated my daughter as my DPOA. So people think when you've taken those steps that you're insulated from something like this coming to a city near you. But what we've learned in states like Florida, California, Michigan, Las Vegas, those advanced directives that by law, by state law and by federal law, say that the person is protected. It says that those advanced directives are supposed to be acknowledged and recognized, that the person has made their selection about who their DPOA is, which I think the history of probate court and guardianship was intended for people that didn't have family, that didn't have advanced directives, that needed somebody to step in that's a stranger to help them with their assets or even potentially Medicaid planning. But this is morphed into something that is no longer that, and you can't even see that basis at this point.
Just for the audience out there, a DPOA is a power of attorney. So basically the court declares somebody without the ability to contract. They're incompetent to form any kind of contract, which is actually the highest form of power that any human can have, is the power to contract. They take that away right out of the gate. DPOA, power of attorney.
That's the first thing, the durable power of attorney. They'll assign an emergency temporary guardian. You can go to court in less than 24 hours. Somebody can make a statement about you today, and you can get a service at 4 p.m. this afternoon, and you'll have a court date tomorrow. And the first thing they'll do is strip you of that power and your designated person, and then you're off to the races. And one of the reasons Ken and the pilot program and the task force is trying to not only change laws, modify laws, but we're trying to really highlight that the good laws that already exist need to be enforced. Because if you already have advanced directives and you've designated somebody to care for you, first of all, there probably isn't an emergency. These assets are not going to be wasted. Somebody's not in squalor. A lot of times, the majority of times, it's about the money, not the person. So there's 12 indelible rights that we all have as, citizens of the United States. The first 4 that they strip are only about money. If you go into what's called a plenary guardianship, then you lose all of your rights. So a person might need help with their finances. A person might need help with cleaning their house. They might need some assistance, but that doesn't mean you get thrown into a full guardianship and that a stranger takes over your rights and you lose the right to vote. You lose the right to choose where you live, who to socialize with, if you can marry. I mean, these are things that we all, think that are not even at risk. We work our whole lives just assuming that those are our rights until you realize how easily they can be taken away.
So the solutions is conservatorship versus guardianship, if I'm not mistaken. No?
Guardianship and conservatorship is just another name for guardianship.
Okay.
It's just used that term is not used in the state of Florida.
Thank you.
We use guardianship.
Okay,
Yes.
then my next understanding was that Maine happens to have maybe better law than your average, has maybe the strongest law that protects the average person.
Well, there's some states that acknowledge the advance directives and they give the rights to what we call an alleged incapacitated person, the AIP, and ultimately, if they say that the person is incapacitated, they then call them the ward, and then they are assigned this estate.
They become a ward of the court, right?
A ward of the court, and then they get a guardian, and the guardian always comes with an attorney. So these people start getting paid for these services that probably a family did for nothing or for very little. And so that's where the estate starts to get affected, and the resources go from the individual and the person and their estate for their retirement to the court system. And so what we're really trying to fight for is, one, to prevent it when it's unnecessary. But then if a case ensues because somebody makes a false claim of exploitation, isolation, I mean, there's a lot of buzzwords that people just throw out there and you just start a case. Well, when you've proven that those things don't exist, there is no exit ramp. There's no way to get out of these cases. These cases can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So unless your family or your loved one has the resources to fight these cases, we have issues that end up in the appellate court, and those are hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you have to have money to fight protecting the person and their assets.
Right. Ken, are there any legislators, senators, House of Reps that are on this?
Yes. Matter of fact, on the task force, we had 2 legislators serve. Senator Bradley from up in Clay County. She's actually helping us sponsor a bill to have a centralized database in the state. She's put the bill through bill drafting, which is an important element. In the House, Representative Burton, who's in leadership with the House, is also on the task force. She's helping us with the drafting of a bill. And there's Representative Chaney from Pinellas County. It looks like she's going to be our sponsor.
Yeah,
so
she's my rep here in District 69.
Good. She's a good person, so
Absolutely.
thank her for her help. Matter of fact, she just called me today on this issue.
Wow. All right, Linda. That's good to hear that there's some legislators. So one thing that I've discussed, there's an attorney friend of mine, Sean McBride, and he talks about voter blocks, where if you can get 2 to 4% of each district, just supporting our legislators, like letting them know so they can show the interest of the public, like, hey, this is a compelling public interest. I've got 2% of my voting base saying we want reform on guardianship, procedure, and law. So
that's
just been an activist type of thing I've been on lately.
That's great, Jeff. And obviously the people who feel the most passion on this are the people who've seen their friends or family members exploited by this. Let me point out now, I think the overwhelming amount of guardians and lawyers out there are ethical and are trying to do a very good job. But I'm a CPA, and you just look and you see that with a lack of internal controls, the temptation for wrongdoing is just too strong. And there's not enough safeguards in the system to protect these wards. And so that's what needs to change. There needs to be a lot more protection, and it can't come at the expense of the ward, which right now, everything comes at the expense of the ward. The whole system keeps coming out. The ward pays for both sides, pays for everything in this deal. And that just has to change.
Yep. The only person that pays outside of the ward is a family member like myself that would be defending the person. That doesn't come from the person's estate, but other states, it actually comes through the court system. If they get a court-appointed attorney, the court-appointed attorney is paid through the court. It's not paid from the ward. And so Ken and I have explored, maybe this is something that should go through the public defender's office. Maybe Guardian should look more like the Guardian ad litem program that's a volunteer-based program, because then there aren't any conflicts of interest. So you have to really look at, a lot of times in life we say follow the money. Well, if you look at who is benefiting from this program and when there's corruption involved, there's people that are making a lot of money, that to Ken's point, there are good guardians and there are good attorneys and there are good judges. But those are people that are going to recognize a person's wishes, a person's advance directives, the family member that they want. They're not, Florida already has good laws. They say that the person would be treated with dignity and respect, that the person's wishes would be listened to. When you actually have advance directives that have been drafted by your family's elder law attorney, as we age, as we get into our late 80s and 90s, it's eminent that we're going to have some degree of Alzheimer's, dementia, these different sicknesses with today's medicine and technology. But when you have advance directives, a healthcare surrogate, and a durable power of attorney, you get to age. The issue isn't about capacity. It shouldn't be about capacity. If there is no exploitation or isolation or claims that people make, if they're not founded, the person gets to keep their rights because they already have that layer of protection. They have their documents and they have their designated person that will care for them. So this shouldn't even be in probate court. It's completely inappropriate that it's even being, in that venue is the problem. But again, you just get a phone call from a bank. A lot of times it's a disgruntled family member that's not in the state, that's not caring for the loved one, and they think they got the short end of the stick. Little do they know, nobody picks this straw. I mean, this is something your parents reach out to you and they ask you to do. And before you actually take on these responsibilities, you don't know the degree of complexity and involvement that it takes out of your life unless you've ever done it for a loved one. And we know aging is progressive. So my mother went blind the last 5 years of her life. When she was initially needing help, it wasn't a big task as far as time and energy and those types of things. But as the person ages and gets increasingly ill and more trips to the hospital and assisted living and nursing homes, it's a full-time job. And a lot of people, I'm self-employed. I really didn't plan on having, a different full-time job, but that's what you do. That's what families do.
Well, something that struck me in talking to you, I don't know if I can share what we talked about as far as exactly what you had to do to subsidize the action that you're going through right now.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to share the fact that my father is potentially exposed over $100,000. My father was a firefighter EMT. My mother was a nurse. My parents are not wealthy people by any stretch of the imagination. They were hardworking people, and my mother made some small investments. But my father's 93 years old. He still has the rest of his life to live out. I mean, God willing, he'll live to be 100 years old. He's in very good health, if not for this case. So it's his money that's there for the remainder of his retirement. But this has cost me to date to defend my father and to keep them from taking over what they call is the person, and to put him in an assisted living or a nursing home, and they take away all of his rights and they prevent the family from seeing him. He could be there alone. Most of the advocates that Ken and I talk to on a regular basis, this is exactly what's happened to the family and the loved ones, and they die alone. My father lives with me and my 16-year-old son. My father has a good quality of life, if not for this situation. But it's cost me close to $200,000 to assist my father and have him remain free. And I don't make that I'm a good real estate broker. Give me a call. I'm happy to help you out. But I guess I'm not that good. I mean, it's a huge sacrifice. I mean, I've got some serious debt at this point. But, you can't walk away from these cases. I mean, I'm not going to relinquish my father and throw caution to the wind to say, all right, just take them. just take them. And I know my dad, we were lucky that he lived through the loss of my mother. They were married 66 years. She's been gone 2 years. You know, that shows, his doctors say, a 93-year-old man, I mean, you take such good care of him and he's in such excellent health. But you talk to other people that are involved in the case, you'd think I was the Matahara. It's like, you know, statistics, and Ken can agree, being from a CPA's perspective, somebody's 93 years old, somebody's doing something right. I mean, his doctors all think that he's fabulous, and he'd tell you himself, he's living a great life. But dealing with this has been equally as difficult, if not worse, than the loss of his wife of 66 years. This is a very, very painful process for the individual and the family. And that's what we really want to highlight and try to put an end to. And here's Hillary.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Hi, Jeff. Thanks
Hello.
for having me on.
Thank you.
Hi, Ken. How are you? And I'm not sure exactly what you were speaking about. I guess, obviously, it's your dad and how catastrophic guardianship can be. I'll just, if it's all right, I'll just give you a really quick rundown of what got me here. I'm a native New Yorker, lived my whole life in Queens, New York. Never thought that anyone could get over on my family and I, you know, street smart.
Yeah, that's New York, right? Because New York, we're always, you know, I lived up there. It's always about, hey, somebody's trying to get over on me.
Right. And you never want anyone to get over on you. So
Right.
Long story short, I moved to Florida 18 years ago. My dad was living in sin with his girlfriend in Orlando, very happy, but it was always known that the last stop on the train, so to speak, would be with my young boys and I in Naples. So the time came, my dad's girlfriend went to live with her family. My dad came down to live with my young boys and I in Naples. My sister, who had no interaction with my dad, you know, the obligatory Christmas call, birthday call, all of a sudden, without notifying anyone, she files a petition to put my dad in a guardianship, to take away all of his rights, to vote, to be able to get a job, to manage his finances, to decide where he lives, to sue, to make changes or provisions to his will, everything. A man worth millions of dollars was left with $5 in his pocket.
Wow.
A petition was filed ex parte. I never knew any of the lingo, the street lingo in probate court. It was done ex parte, which means that none of the parties had to be notified. So without my dad being notified, without my dad able to go in front of the judge and say, hey, listen, it's all about me. Let me tell you the real deal about what's going on. I'm fine. My dad was put into an emergency guardianship. And honestly, I thought I could go to the cops. I thought I could go to my politicians. I thought I could make a few calls and everything would be sorted out. We're good. Didn't happen. I do not know how I did it, but my dad got out of guardianship. In the end, I always say it, and it sounds, Jeff, really dramatic. Trust me, it isn't. We would have cut our arms and legs off to keep my father out of guardianship. It is so corrupt. I always say and I love Ken Burke, and Ken Burke is doing the best that he can to change what is going on. But I always say I have more respect for the Italian mafia in New York, because at least they leave women, children, and the elderly alone. The probate mafia, the people that spot, the spotters, the attorneys, the guardians, and the judges who are oblivious maybe to what's going on. I have less respect for them, because it is an underground operation, real estate fraud, just so much going on. And thank goodness we are able to come on your show and tell our nightmare.
Now, technically, the Audra Christian show, this is a real estate show. So
yes,
a lot of people listening to this are in real estate. They're like, oh, well, this is, what's this have to do with me as a real estate investor?
Right. And there is a connection. So I will read a letter in a second, but let me just give the backstory quickly. A couple, I won't mention their last names. We'll call them the Smiths. and they were put into a guardianship for whatever reason. I believe that they were never incapacitated. They are alcoholics. So they have a multitude of properties throughout Clearwater, throughout Pinellas County. And they were both sold for undervalue. And within a month, they were sold for more than double. So let me just read you this letter. And it has to do with real estate. And what the modus operandi is that you're put in a guardianship. The guardian has total control of your property. Say your house is worth $200,000. They list it for $150,000 to a friend, an LLC, someone who will pay cash for it. And after it's sold to them, they sell it. They flip it without doing any renovations whatsoever for sometimes double what it's worth. It's throughout the state of Florida, and we have lots of documentation. So
Hillary, before you read the letter, I won't say their name, but this is the case study that I did, Jeff, and Ken and Hillary already know about the case. So we'll call them the Smiths. But when I did the research, this couple, which Hillary says when a guardianship takes over a couple, it's a BOGO. They took them both. The woman's already got out of guardianship, so the facts prove that she did not deserve to be in a guardianship, but the husband is still under the guardian, and they're working toward that. But in 1998, this couple bought a house for $340,000. They're worth a lot of money. They had $250,000 in a coin collection. And Hillary's going to read this letter that the wife writes to the judge to say, I don't want you to sell my primary residence. I needed some help around the house. I needed some help with cleaning. I've got a sick husband, but no, we don't need this full guardianship. So she loses the case. They both get put into guardianship. The guardian lists the house. It goes under contract same day, which Ken and I, one of the things that we discuss in the pilot program is we think real estate should stay on the market a minimum of 30 days, even in this hot market, so that we can vet the system and make sure that, you're going to get the highest return on the investment. Because the reason that guardianship is a real tie to real estate is most of us, our single largest investment is our home.
Exactly.
Regardless of what you have for assets, that is where we've invested the biggest amount of our.
Your home is your nest egg.
Hey, Jeff, this is where, when we're talking about reform, you can hear all these problems that Sue and Hillary have been mentioning. The question is then, how do we formalize something to end this type of thing? And that's where you come into both legislative solutions and also court processes. Yes. Now, you probably can't put in statute what Sue just suggested, but it could be put in some type of formalized court rule that if you have a piece of real estate, in addition to getting some type of market analysis, because those can be altered, as Sue can tell you, and those who listen in real estate know, but the market doesn't lie. So it should, you make it a mandate that it has to be an MLS listing so that it's out there, that it stay on the market for 30 days or however many days, where therefore at a minimum, so that people, disinterested parties can express interest on the property, and the market then will justify, gosh, that market analysis was correct, and there's no contracts, or there's a couple contracts, and you can get the best offer. But something going on the market, that same day, not being listed at MLS, being sold to this mysterious LLC, it all adds up to taking away from the integrity of the process. And Hillary is correct. They brought to my attention deals which have taken place in Pinellas County where within a 7-month period, a property that sold for $300,000 then sells for $700,000. Yeah. And we go to the building department to see if there's been permits pulled. In the particular example, there was, but only for $50,000 of value. So you just wonder, did $50,000 of value add 300 and some thousand of additional value to it? And it does look suspicious. It's hard to justify. And the court has no way of knowing if there was and on that particular piece of property, there was a formal appraisal done, not just a market analysis, but still the market itself didn't dictate that. And that's a better way to do it. So that type of reform, we need to institutionalize so this stops.
Right.
And if I could just say quickly, and Jeff, you'll cut me off if you need to, wouldn't be the first or the last time. So let me just, for our listeners, just take, you know what, and I'll mention his name, and Mr. Freeman in Polk County. It's Lakeland, home of, Publix. He was put into a guardianship. There was correspondence that he didn't need one. He's an ex-sheriff. And the guardian, so Mr. Freeman bought his home for $42,000 in 1999. He goes into guardianship, and that same house is sold in March of 2020 for $73,000. It's listed the next month for $174,000 and sells less than 3 months later for $174,000. Now, did I look to see if anything was pulled to fix it up? You don't have to. With less than a month, what could they have done?
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, again, to you, from what Sue says, that you know your stuff and you know who to complain to. The thing is, how do we decipher more of what's going on, and who would we complain to concerning real estate deals that I believe, and I'm not into, I don't know real estate 100%, but as an outsider looking in, there, it doesn't look right.
Well, and here's another point, Hillary. In real estate, especially when there's any lender involved, the Dodd-Frank Act states that it has to be an arm's length transaction. So if I sell a house to Hillary and she gets a mortgage from, Ken's best friend, there can't be coercion. There has to be the arm's length transaction.
Right.
We don't have to name names, and we don't have to tell you how many case studies we have done where attorneys that have been involved, guardians that have been involved, that it goes to the guardian's daughter, the attorney's business partner. I mean,
but Sue, realistically speaking, all of these 99 of them are cash deals. They're LLCs.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So it doesn't fall under the arm's length transaction. But to Ken's point, we have to put a process control in place that's going to identify these faults and put, benchmarks in place so that these things can't happen.
Red flags.
Sometimes we have an appraisal, but if it's a inexpensive property and for some reason we don't have an appraisal, we could do something as easy as have agents like myself do a comparative market analysis. Well, then maybe we have to have three random people that get spun on a wheel, that if somebody comes in at 100,000 and two other people are at 300,000, well, then somebody's off. So there's things that you can do to build process control. And those are the things that we talk about within the pilot program. That isn't the focus that we did with regard to the task force, because when you give recommendations to legislators and for session, you have to be really specific and narrow in your focus. And that's why I said in the beginning, there's so many ways to approach this. We have short-term goals, we have long-term goals, we do case studies. But what we're doing today is we want the public to be aware of this, because not only do we want to change laws, but we have good laws that exist that we shouldn't have to go to the appellate courts to have them enforced.
Right.
So we want to educate people. We want to incite people. We want them to understand that these things can happen, and what are the things that you can do to try to avoid, the horror that some of us have lived through or are living through.
What contacts can any of you leave for the listeners here if they want more information or want to get active?
I can give you my social security number, my mother's maiden name. No, I'm kidding. I can give you whatever you'd like. My phone number is 239-682-4249, and my email is HILLAHG@AOL.com. And to our listeners, if your home is your biggest asset. Be very scared about guardianship, because whether you need one or not, your home is your home and it is your money. If it is sold and you want to do whatever you can, whether that means putting your son or daughter on the deed so that a bad guy or bad woman does not get hold of your real estate. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. That takes us to Susan's contact, Susan Melendy at Justice for All Florida Incorporated, 727-657-8912, or realtormelendy@gmail.com in regards to this. And definitely speak with a valid attorney about your advance directives, direct power of attorney, and healthcare surrogate, and call your constituents. The constituents, if you can actually watch the archive show, the senators and House reps that Ken Burke mentioned, those are your constituents. Call them.
Yep.
If they're not in your district, call your district and say, hey, these senators and House reps are on board with this. When are you going to get on board with it? And then if you can build a voter block, if you can get 2 to 4% of people in your district, that's like 100 to 200 voters. That's a lot for a district. Yeah. Like if he's got 100, if that rep has 100, 200 voters saying, hey, we want you to do something about this guardianship, they're going to do something about it. They want to get elected.
Senator Rouson has been a great advocate. Nick DeSegli is running for Senate. Jeff Brandis has been a wonderful supporter. The people that Ken mentioned earlier, and Ken, I don't know if you can put it in the chat or if we can get the information to Jeff, but do we have the videos of the task force meetings that people could view? Because Vito Ropo did such a wonderful job about describing what guardianship is versus us trying to do it in such a short period of time, that I think that would be really helpful to your listeners, Jeff.
If you go to the guardianshipimprovementtaskforce.com, you can see the whole record of the task force meetings.
Wow. We do have about 15, 20 minutes.
Go for a break?
No, we're still going. We don't have much time to go on the correctional, the DOC topic. Do you want to keep rolling with the guardianship or?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We can reschedule another time.
Yeah, we can schedule another time. So I think this is a great topic. There was a caller that called. If he could call in again, that'd be great. We'll definitely take your call. We got carried away here, and anything else from anybody?
Yes, if I could read
Please.
The letter. And again, we're talking about Miss Smith. And this is a letter that she wrote to the judge concerning how she is incapacitated and is really concerned about her property. And this is from September of 2020. I have lived at our home in Treasure Island with 24/7 assistance since June 1st, 2019. Prior to that, I was in an assisted living facility. I only need help with my housework. I, of course, say the same thing. I'm happy with my current arrangement. However, this is fiscally unsustainable. My husband is in an ALF. He's in good condition, and we had hoped for him to join me at home. He petitioned the court for such an arrangement, but nothing has changed. He should be at home with me to optimize our quality of life during the COVID pandemic. This also becomes a safety issue, as he would be much better at home. I am easily most capable of taking care of our own affairs. I am mentally and physically able. Under the current situation, our finances are being drained. One of our homes was sold far below market value in 2019 and subsequently resold for over double in 2020. We were not consulted regarding this sale. We also own a condo in Reddington Beach. Since 2019, I requested numerous times to visit. Last month, I was finally allowed to visit. The condo has fallen into disrepair, full of mold. The AC hasn't been running, etc. I am sure the plan is again to sell this property far under market value as was previously done and sold for more than double. Please stop the further sale of our assets and property. We wish to use the condo as rental property and perhaps move in there in the future. Thank you for your consideration. And of course, you know, the properties, the majority of them were sold. So it's a sad connotation on, you know, correspondence that's sent to anyone who maybe can make a difference. And Mrs. Smith never got a response. So it's quite upsetting.
So guardianshipimprovementtaskforce.com, folks, get on it. Senator Darryl Rouson is a wonderful advocate. Rep. Diane Hart is a wonderful advocate. Senator Bradley, all the ones Ken mentioned. Rep. Chaney, Linda Chaney in my district, 69. She's agreed to sponsor the bill for the Florida task force per Ken Burke.
Awesome.
Yep. And I have a little bit more info here if I can get to it. And but that.
Well, I wanted to point out, Jeff,
Please.
is when people go to an estate planner or an elder law attorney, one of the first questions your listeners want to ask is, first of all, you got to call somebody like Hillary or I and vet, you know, who the good, the bad, and the ugly are in the industry, because the majority of people that are in it to win it are people that are considered litigators. So if they're a litigator, there's a good percentage of people that are on the wrong side of this thing. But what you want to say to the elder law attorney, if they're drafting your documents, is, if I ever ended up in a situation that involved probate court, are you going to stand beside me? Are you going to defend these documents that I've paid all this money for because I think that I'm protected? I can guarantee you 9 out of 10 estate planning attorneys will tell you, no, I will not. I just draft these documents and they're in good shape, and good luck with that. And then you realize when they're challenged that you're like odd man out and you have to go find these litigators. So what I recommend to people is go find a firm, if not an attorney, that they have litigators on staff, that one, they're going to draft the documents that are going to be somewhat foolproof. But if and when they're challenged, what is it that you've paid for? Make sure that these people are going to stand behind what they have done. I don't get to draft contracts, and if there's a mistake or an error, go, I don't know, you snooze, you lose. I guess you don't get the house. I have to be able to stand behind what it is that I do for my clients, but these people don't. So you have to be really careful when you hire these people. What is their role? What happens when these documents get drafted? Because people are shocked to learn that those are not the people that are going to help you in court.
Oh, so I can't just be a paper pusher and not have to show up to court? Oh, man. I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that surprising?
One other thing regarding attorneys, I have some say litigation experience. I have shopped for attorneys too. In addition to that, it's very important to always ask an attorney, how many wins do you have in this fight? How many wins do you have? And go by the record, because I see really good attorneys, they'll post their wins and their case numbers right on their website.
Yeah, it's just like someone who plays the lottery. They only tell you when they win, not when they lose, you know? So
right.
Yeah, that's a good thing to ask. You know, I have to say that my father's attorney, tax guy, and now power of attorney because of the guardianship situation. My dad, you know, my little spiel is he got up in 2003 and he took a shower, went to his attorney and got his documents done. And his attorney has really stuck by him, whether it's concerning his property or his liquid assets. So a lawyer is just finding a good lawyer, as my mother would say if she was still alive, is like finding a good mechanic. They're few and far between. And when you get one, you stick with them.
Could you mention that one attorney you were discussing last night? Is that appropriate?
Sure. Attorney Ron Denman is in Tampa. He's one of the people that are on the right side of this. He does a lot of advocacy. He helps a lot of what become victims. He does some appellate work, so that one of the rules that we're really challenging and working on is a law that states that an alleged incapacitated person may substitute their attorney. But in probate court and in Pinellas County, we see time and time again that that's challenged. They give you a court-appointed attorney and you're stuck with these people. They don't have to give you filings. A lot of times they don't even invite you to court. You don't have to be in court. You don't have to receive ADA accommodations. And so it's not right, especially if the person is the one paying for the attorney. Why shouldn't they have their choice? Well, where's the catch? We took away your right to contract. I'm sorry, Mr. So-and-so, you cannot, contract an attorney, which here's another, point to remember. You don't have to contract attorneys. You can hire people verbally. So it's not really a written contract. They like to have contracts because they have retainers, but you don't have to do that to get an attorney. So we took that to the second DCA, the appellate court, to say, isn't that the understanding? That's what the law says, because people are arguing like a bad divorce, whether or not that is true or not. And the appellate court said it is true. And so then this individual should be able to have their own attorney. Well, the other attorneys continued to fight. And the judge said, well, we better wait and see what they really meant to say. So these are the things that are really frustrating because, yes, we want better laws. Yes, we want to have the tracking system that the task force identified. The advocates are drafting a bill. We've actually got 2 bills in session. One that has to do with tracking Social Security when a guardian takes over your assets, because that's not currently done. And then also we want to acknowledge, recognize, and respect advance directives. Even though that's the law as it exists today, it's not happening. So we want stronger laws that will really secure that happens. But to Ken's point earlier, although we don't have tracking, because we're an aging demographic, if you read AARP's article from about a month ago, the statistics estimate that there are 70,000 Floridians that are under a guardianship, and they estimate over 3 million Americans. And we know those numbers are low because there isn't tracking. So when you don't think that this can come to a city near you sometime soon, you're mistaken, because this is prevalent.
Well, plus, if obviously they look at it, the people on the wrong side of this thing, they look at it as a huge cookie jar, right?
It's
and
massive.
So if it's not arrested soon, there's going to be a whole lot of other people that want a piece of that cookie jar.
Well, and it's not even initiated by just people that are benefiting, whether it be an attorney or a guardian. There are committee members that do the evaluations of the AIP. But there are hospitals within our county, in our state, that they feed this system because they take what is a client that, even though they have family, they have loved ones, they have advanced directives, they say that the customer is stuck and they don't want to have to deal with the person.
It's a pipeline.
It's a pipeline. And so it happens in hospitals. It happens in rehabs. There's companies that are built on the foundation of making a profit based on this, which what we envision long-term is a system similar to the ARC in Pinellas County. They help special needs children and young adults with housing, resources, programming, all these different things. We're not saying some of these people don't need help. Like we said about the case study earlier, the Smiths, she admitted that she needed help around the house. She admitted she needed help with the husband, but needing assistance should never equate to guardianship. You don't want to lose the rights.
Right, I agree. And, going back to real estate real quickly, and also data really quick, we need the data, and Ken can correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of these grants that are given to counties, for different things, you've got to give a definitive of how many people are affected. Is that true, Ken?
Yes.
Right. That's what I thought, but this maybe is a little smidge in another lane concerning real estate, which your show is about. So I don't want to lose anyone, but let's talk about estate sales a little bit. So there's one gentleman, and it's usually the same in different counties. When you are put into a guardianship, they sell your home, and then there's another guy who goes in. You're worth $1 million, right, on paper. He goes in, 9 out of 10 of his inventory say you might be worth $1 million, but the stuff in your house, it's worth about $450. It's completely far-fetched. He's the only one there with the guardian. You know, they're in like Flynn, and there's absolutely no oversight whatsoever. If you go into a bank and you go to the safety deposit box, you need an employee to do the looky look with you if you're a guardian. But when they're selling this stuff, which is a lot of times quite valuable jewelry, cash on hand, there's really no one of any importance in my book that is there overseeing the situation. So that's another big issue.
And yet Florida law states that the AIP of the ward can be in attendance, but we have example after example that they say, okay, I'm going to go that day. They go, we'd really prefer that you don't. And there's a lot of intimidation involved. There's a lot of control involved. These people are taking over what were your decisions and your rights, that you can't really rock the boat. So they say, no, it's just going to be me and this guy that does it. There should be a video camera. There should be a camera. There should be the person in attendance of their own belongings. It's very upsetting to a person to think that their privacy is going to be, taken over like that. So what I've drafted is an affidavit that we've discussed in the pilot program that before DCF gets involved, before there's an emergency hearing and a temporary guardian and all these things that ensue, that a person, again, like a guardian ad litem, would meet with this individual and say, what's happening within the family? What's happening with these dynamics? And you'd identify for the person, these are your 12 rights. Do you need ADA accommodations? Do you understand do you have advanced directives? Who have you named as your durable power of attorney? Do you have a healthcare surrogate? Am I able to talk to your primary care physician? And go through a 1-page document that they would sign, and it would be an affidavit to say, what are these persons' wishes? What are their desires? Before we even involve them with probate court in DCF and committee reviews and evaluations. That's also unnecessary.
And back to real estate, because I know you have to wrap it up, but most importantly, taking them out of their homes.
All right, folks, we have to close it out here. Thank you to Clerk of Circuit Court for Pinellas, Ken Burke, for joining us. That's a real public servant right there, just joining us here on the local radio show. Thank you to Susan Melendy. Thank you to Hillary Hogue. And we hope you all were blessed with this information. Out. See Audra next week.
Yeah, you know what we is. Sometimes you gotta stay in. Welcome to my house. Baby, take control now. We can't even slow down. We don't have to go a while. Welcome to my house. Play the music.
WTAN, Clearwater.
FM 106.1.
WDCF, Dade City.
FM 102.3.
WZHR, Zephyr Hills.
FM 104.3.
Listen.
This is CBS News on the Hour, presented by Indeed.com.
I'm Matt Piper in New York. It was their first conversation in months, and President Biden told